everyone. Good Thursday afternoon. Thanks so much for joining me here in the WSAZ Plus studios. We're talking what's the buzz at the West Virginia State Capitol. Yesterday, West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey delivering his second State of the State address. And so I think there's a lot to unpack there, and let's go ahead and get into some of that. He talked about so many different topics when we're thinking about this, from broadband, economic growth, to even seeing, and this is some video from his State of the State last night that I wanted to pull up so that we could see a little bit of it, even to investing in our children's education. A big conversation this legislative session as lawmakers began that just yesterday. It's hard to believe we're at that time of the year, but we know that lawmakers in West Virginia went back to work at the Capitol, working to pass bills with the goal of hopefully improving all of West Virginians' lives, families' lives, and the stuff that matters to them. And so this is video from Governor Patrick Morrisey's second State of the State address. Like we said, he talked about a different and a large variety of topics, sometimes hard to keep up with because he had so much to say in that address. It lasted for a little over an hour last night. And if you weren't able to catch the full thing, we have that up for you. We streamed it last night. You can also catch it on Governor Patrick Morrisey's YouTube page. But there is a lot to talk about. We're thinking about health care. That was a big conversation, as well as economic growth, broadband, even expanding the state's workforce and pay raises for some of the state's employees. And so today I got the chance to sit down with West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey to talk a little bit more about what went his thought process behind some of those policies, the things that he wants to lay out in that State of the State, and really what he hopes that lawmakers will get across the finish line in the next 60 days. I should say even really the next 59 days, because we're already starting to see that number dwindle down as the session is now in day 2. And so let's go ahead and take a little bit of our conversation so that you guys can listen to it as well. All right, West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today following your second State of the State address. Obviously, last night there was a lot of momentum recapping the last year in your speech, and I think you covered so many different topics it was hard to keep up at times. When we're talking about economic growth, broadband, expanding the state's workforce, even pay raises for some state employees, as well as flood prevention. When you look back at the last year and you're looking forward to this year, what is your main priority that you think we have to get across the finish line this year?
Well, first of all, it's really important that we continue to make the progress on economic development. That means more high-paying jobs and working on the fundamentals so that we can succeed and bring more businesses to West Virginia and allow the businesses that are here to succeed. So last year's, from October through now, just a few short months, we were able to announce over $4.5 billion in new private sector investments. That's projected to create over 4,200 jobs. That's an important takeaway because we've been working very hard on that. That's one of the reasons why we're also pushing very hard for our income tax cut. Because of the tough decisions that we made, we were able to see significant surpluses for the first 6 months of this budget year, over $128 million alone. We need to do a 10% income tax cut, and that's going to help not only make West Virginia more attractive to move to, but it's going to help a lot of people that are here who are struggling with affordability, the high price of groceries, the energy prices. We have a chance to actually provide tax release to people, and we could do it right away. So I'm asking the legislature to move immediately to not only conform a lot of the permanent tax provisions that President Trump has put forth, but to do this 10% income tax cut. It's going to help a lot of people. It's broadly applied, and it's going to be meaningful relief for our citizens.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that is, really something of buzz that a lot of people grabbed attention of last night. When you're thinking about this, there have been some critics who say we can't afford that as a state. We didn't meet the fiscal responsibility for the economic triggers that are already in place in state code. So what would you say to those critics?
Well, I'll say that I've been the one that have been really working hard to have a fiscally responsible budget. So we've made the tough decisions over the last year, And people know that. We came in, we had some financial challenges, but rather than run from them, we ran to them. And actually, we made the changes, reduced spending significantly, and made the kind of choices that allows us to prioritize returning money back to the people. Now, we're going to have to keep making tough choices, but I think that to make tough choices and provide more tax relief for citizens, those are the things that the citizens expect. This is the people's money. And when you have the kind of affordability challenges out there, you can't afford to not do tax cuts. We need to see more relief passed down to West Virginians. I think that's critically important. We also have to keep pace with our neighbors. When you see Kentucky and Ohio and other states engaging in cuts to their state income tax, West Virginia has to keep pace. If we don't keep pace, then we're actually going to lose more business and lose more people, and that's not what I'm going to allow to have happen.
I think you put a tall task on lawmakers to be able to tackle that this session. Obviously, you know, it is a budget year as well. And so when you hear from Democrats who say, you know what, this doesn't address the overall policies that we need in place, is there something more that we could be doing?
Well, look, I think it does address the issues of affordability. Imagine if you can get a 10% income tax cut. What more could we do to put more money back in the hands of the hardworking people of the state of West Virginia? You know, knowing that the power bills have been going up and price of groceries. Now, President Trump has been working a lot on that, but I'm working on that too. And if you can get a couple hundred more bucks in your pocket and to address that, people should be supportive of that. So we're the only ones. We have the plan that we've been putting out, and we've been working with the House and the Senate. We're excited to partner with them, and we're thrilled that the policies we're putting in place can allow us to grow the economy, improve productivity, but put more money back in people's pockets. So I think the proof is in the pudding. Look at what we were able to do just from October of last year, over $4.5 billion in new private sector investment. That's incredible. That's projected to have 4,200 jobs. So we're making the right decisions by working on the fundamentals. I think we're getting good response because of that.
Will you settle for anything less than 10%?
Listen, I want a 10% income tax cut. I think that's the good kind of meaningful relief that's going to move the needle to help West Virginians. Of course, I want to work closely with the legislature, and I want to listen to them and hear what's on their mind. So, you know, I want to be collaborative. Most importantly, we need to get something big done. We need to make sure that we're conforming West Virginia with a lot of the Trump tax provisions. That's also part of our budget and our proposal. And then we also need a substantial tax cut. So I want to get as much as I can through the process. I think we're getting good reception on that. And I'm asking the legislature to work with me to get a meaningful income tax cut in place.
60 days for the legislature is not a lot of time to get a lot of work done when we're talking about the number of reforms that we may expect to see this year. One in particular, one of your initiatives I want to talk a little bit more about is the Star Academies. So the school within the school, the approach to make sure that children who are in the child welfare system are able to kind of work around that and have a different avenue for care. Given the fact that those 4 pilot programs that you mentioned, according to the West Virginia Department of Education, only 1 currently exists, why pitch an idea like that when we've heard from school districts who have run that program say, we looked at the feasibility long term and it was just too much for districts who already have tight pockets?
Look, I think that we're coming up with policies to really put our kids first. And we've seen some amazing statistics when you do these schools within a school that you can actually reduce absenteeism and help reduce some of the mental health challenges that we've seen. So I'm looking at stats that show it's very, very positive. And so I see what's gone on in Louisiana and Mississippi and in West Virginia. And this could be something very, very effective for our state. And we can't just keep doing things the way they've always been done. So I want to work with people that have good ideas to put our kids first. We've made significant investments in public school and in school choice in our budget, and we're excited about that. So I think that Star Academies, I think that these programs, these school within a schools, doesn't have to be Star, it could be other programs that focus on those interventions really matter. And it's common sense, right? If you can reduce absenteeism and if you can focus on improving outcomes earlier in the process, that's going to lead to better results. And I think that's going to ultimately save money. So I'm encouraged by the statistics I'm reading. You know, different people have different political ideas, but my interests are focusing on the kids and encouraging best learning and ultimately reducing healthcare costs for the state long term as well.
Yeah, and I recognize that. I just am curious maybe what your approach would be for those districts who say, when we looked at the cost of running this program, while we did see improvements in our school attendance rates, and those kids in particular, it's not feasible for us long term.
Well, listen, I think that we have to make sure we're analyzing the whole budget. West Virginia spends significant amounts per capita on our kids, and we have to be investing in things that are actually moving the needle, right? And so that's where I come from, that I want to look at things that are effective. A lot of these schools within the schools have been proven to be effective and more effective than a lot of what we've been doing in the state for a long time. So we need to embrace new challenges and have opportunities, whether we're talking about opportunities here, schools within a school, or whether we're talking about improving public education by looking at the science of reading, or whether we're talking about improving digital literacy, getting better tutoring and using modern technology to help move our grades up. I want to be open-minded of what's going to work. That's what matters. And improving educational attainment, that is our top priority. You have to make sure that you're lifting attainment up, because even if you fail at a lot of other things, but succeed in educating your kids and have an educated population, you're not going to fail.
Financially, I think something's got to give. Is there a certain category or a certain avenue that you're looking at or you're working with lawmakers to look at to say, hey, if we're going to run these programs and expand them, this is maybe where we could cut cost. This is how we can financially back it.
So that's why we've been really aggressive and fiscally responsible. And when we came in, we saw that there were huge financial challenges and we ran toward them. We addressed them. As many people know, we made changes last year. We reduced spending, not only through the budget, but separately. Every day, we're looking at different ways to save money and make government more efficient and lean and make government smaller. So what that's doing is that's saving money, that's allowing us to put more money back in to have lower taxes, to put more money back in for our schools and for a Hope Scholarship. So there are a lot of trade-offs that are involved. And so people get mad because they want government to come in and do anything. That's not my approach. As I talked about last night in the State of the State, we were really clear that we want to make the decisions that are providing more transparency. We're auditing the agencies. We brought back the long-term budgeting, and we're getting government out of some of the things they never should have been involved in. I mentioned last night that we were able to sell the state's long-term care facilities. That was a decision that had get pushed off for decades. We made that tough choice because government never should have been in the business of being in the long-term care facility business. That's better left to the private sector, better outcomes, better for the state financially. Those are the kind of things we're doing in order to make a difference in our state.
All right. Well, you heard West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey there kind of giving us really a deep dive into how his state of the state and the priorities that he laid out for lawmakers to consider over the next 60-day session. This was a lot to unpack. We know that. And so really, I asked him yet again at the end of our conversation this morning, I said, what is the number one thing? And he reiterated cutting the state's personal income tax by 10%. You heard him there. He did mention, you know, when I asked him, I said, would you accept anything less than 10%? Because that's a large amount of taxes or cuts to taxes that we've seen. We've already started to see a pretty wide net being cast from the previous administration, and we've made significant progress, lawmakers would say, in cutting the state's personal income tax. So you did hear him say, he says, I want to work collaboratively. He didn't necessarily say I wouldn't budge, but his number one goal, he's reiterated time and time again in our conversation this morning, was we have to look and work to cut the state's personal income tax. So I sincerely appreciate you guys joining me here for a little bit of a debrief on West Virginia's State of the State address that happened yesterday evening. And so we are going to be continuing our coverage. Of course, we know this is only the beginning of what we will really see. Today, we're starting to learn more about how those policies will be put in place. Remember, this is a budget year for West Virginia, so we do expect to see a shift in maybe what the administration is considering as priorities, maybe where they want to put more money and pull from different areas. And so we are going to start to see a little bit of change in that. And of course, that is going to be something that we're going to be following. Again, all of these topics that he discussed, even increasing salaries for state employees and giving them a raise. Those are certain areas where we're going to have to start to see them being outlined in the budget and hear from lawmakers about what is feasible. So I sincerely appreciate you joining me here on your Thursday afternoon to get a little bit of the buzz at the West Virginia Capitol. We are going to be keeping a close ear to what's happening. We have live coverage throughout our evenings as we have reporters up there, and that is part of my job here too at WSAZ. I like to stay in tune to what's going on in our communities. So again, thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a great Thursday. I appreciate it.